I actually chose Ohio State after I think I toured about 18 undergrad institutions, which is absolutely insane. Please don't do that. My parents both went here, and I kind of had like an aversion to it. I was like, it's too big. I don't want to go there. Like, you guys went there. I want to do my own thing. And then when I showed up to Ohio State, I was like, this is it. I want to go here. And I came, and after touring and loving it and everything, I was like, oh, well, it'll be perfect, because originally I wanted to do political science, and being in Columbus would be very valuable. And then once I got here, I decided history was the better track for me and everything. But it all kind of worked out differently than I expected it to, because I really thought it was too big. I didn't want to be here, but I really loved it after the tour and everything. My grandfather was an engineering professor here for a number of years, and so that was another connection that I was just like, no, everyone in my family did it. I don't want to be here. I want to do my own thing. And so it was really hard to argue with them about it, and then once I got here, I was like, they're right. I love it. And so I transitioned from political science to history. Originally, I went into poli-sci, and I think there was just a lot of cynicism from people like about history in general. To be honest, as a major, I would have chosen it, I think, from the get-go if people had been more open to the idea that there's so many opportunities as a history major and things of that nature. And once I got here, I realized I was just not very happy being a poli-sci major. And so once I transitioned to history, I definitely loved it more. I was more passionate about it. It was what I wanted to be doing, and I probably should have done it from the get-go, to be honest, and just picked what I was interested in. So many people think that there's like more valuable things to be doing with your time, which first of all, I don't believe is true. And second of all, they think that there's not that many jobs that you can pursue with something like a history degree. I think so many people kind of attribute it to simply just teaching. Like, only teaching is what you can go into if you get a history degree. Which is very valuable, and a lot of people do that, but that's not what I wanted to do with my history degree. And every single time I told someone I was a history major, they was like, oh, okay, so you're gonna go teach. And I was like, no, actually not. And so I think there's this level of misunderstanding about what you can do with the degree. I think there's a lot more conversations happening around history right now, especially in this country. Maybe not all of them positive, but it is kind of putting us in a spotlight. I mean, archivists right now are in a major spotlight with everything happening like politically with the Library of Congress and things of that nature. And so fields that we can go into as history professionals are kind of being put in a spotlight right now, and so that kind of keeps the ball rolling on conversations. People don't know what archivists are or what they do until all of a sudden they're in the news. People don't know that you can go to library school after having a history degree. They don't know law school's like one of the big options after pursuing this undergraduate degree. So I think things like that are extremely important, and to keep those conversations flowing. I think even as an undergrad, I didn't know that public history as a master's degree was an option until I pursued internships. When you go to a museum, when you go to like a national park or whatever it may be, a lot of people who are helping you in those places have a history background, and their jobs are extremely valuable because you're there, you're experiencing it, and you're enjoying it. And without us in this field, you wouldn't be experiencing that. So you almost have to have a passion going into it, and sharing that with all of my like fellow undergrads was very important, because we all wanted to be there. We all wanted to be a part of these conversations. And so I think that that's number one, is being very passionate about what we were doing, what we were studying. A lot of us would go on to grad school as well, I think. I think a lot of people who like history in general are very passionate about it, even if it's not their major. So a lot of people, I think, do a history minor here at Ohio State, and those people definitely also have that passion and everything, even though it's not their primary field of study. I think leadership is like inherently something that history undergrads and people who go into the field is really something that we get into, because we develop really good critical thinking skills, I would say, from a field like history. I think even like science fields, like you have this discussion of like looking at data and coming up with your own idea of what that means by like interpreting it and stuff. And there's less of a conversation when it comes to humanities about that. But we're doing that work too. We're going back and looking through old documents and things of that nature to come up with an argument and make a point. And then on top of that, even if you aren't making your own point, you're still diving through and doing like reading comprehension and things of that nature. And I feel like that is not something that is as inherently valued in other fields of study, especially in undergraduate courses, when that is one of the main things in the real world and most real world jobs that you absolutely have to be successful. And that, I think, leads really well to leadership positions. So I think some of the qualities that I have that have led me to history specifically, and then lend themselves really well to like the professional field in general, is one, like I mentioned, critical thinking. Without having done some of the senior seminars that I did at Ohio State, I wouldn't have the ability to have gone on to grad school and feel as comfortable with the work I was doing, because I think that I wouldn't have like pushed the boundary and understood how to be doing that work. And then beyond grad school in like a professional setting, being able to kind of look beyond just like what you're reading and see a deeper narrative and be able to develop it, especially what I do. Like a lot of it is taking narratives and creating a story for people to have access to with digital documents and stuff. So to get people interested, you have to be able to tell those stories. But a lot of times things aren't like explicitly said. So how do you extract a narrative that is kind of there, underlyingly there? So having those reading comprehension and like critical thinking skills, I think, is extremely important. Clay Howard, very wonderful. I think I did my reading seminar with him, and it was about the sexual revolution, and it was the first time that a professor had told us to call them by their name and just establish like this relationship that I think was a lot more comfortable to start talking about these maybe uncomfortable subjects that people didn't really have a conversation about a lot of the time. And I think that laid the groundwork really easily to begin having conversations about the actual history as well. So like having that relationship was very, very valuable. And then Dr. Sam White was my writing seminar professor, and that course was all about the Little Ice Age, and he kind of set the groundwork and the ball rolling for my internship at Princeton, which was with the Thomas Jefferson Papers. I don't think that I would have pursued a public history master's degree if I hadn't developed that relationship and been given that opportunity either. The history of like climatology and things of that nature came from my experience at Ohio State with not only history courses, but also a lot of the general education courses I took. For STEM majors, and I think even beyond like STEM majors, for people who might be in the humanities and also have to take their GEs, like English majors or whatever it may be, I encourage you to kind of branch out. It might be easy to say, oh, I'm going to take the history of like science from 1700 to whatever it may be for someone taking a course like that. But if you kind of think about it differently and you saw someone like Sam White's class where it was history of the Little Ice Age, and you don't know what that is, but you know that it has something to do with weather and that could relate to the STEM field a little bit, like branch out and think a little bit more deeply about what classes could be of interest to you and what you are pursuing as a degree as well, or completely like flip the script and decide, I just want to learn something new. Like I would really love to learn about Shakespeare or early America or whatever it may be. Sometimes those classes are the most valuable because you don't know anything about them and it's super fun to learn something new. I think one of my favorite history courses at Ohio State was history of presidential elections. And while I've learned a lot about United States history, that was one I hadn't learned about the loser of like the campaigns and everything. And so doing that campaign by campaign was so interesting. And I think it's one that a lot of people would find fun, And so just kind of like delving in, and don't just pick one because you're like, oh, I've done US history, I'll do it again, Think about it a little bit more deeply about what might actually be fun for you or relevant to your field. I moved back to Columbus fairly recently. I worked at Ohio State for a little bit at the historic costumes and historic clothing archive over here. That was very interesting because I was working with clothing instead of manuscripts and books, so that was a very different experience. And then I transitioned very recently to the Ohio History Connection, where I'm doing more digital work, specifically with newspapers in Ohio Memory, which is a program that uploads digital copies of historic documents or modern documents to a database so people have access to it. The position I'm currently in, I'm very lucky to have found it as quickly as I did, thankfully. I was advantaged in a few ways. One was from coming to Ohio State for my undergrad degree. I had a lot of connections that I made, Dr. Irwin being one of them. I continued to foster those conversations. I continued to email Dr. Irwin and Clay and a number of other professors to maintain those relationships while I was doing grad school, to make sure if I moved back to Columbus, I still had those connections so I could reach out to people if need be. And then during grad school, I continued my work at the American Philosophical Society, which was almost an extension of the original internship that I had had at Princeton, which again was a product of Dr. Sam White here at Ohio State, kind of presenting this opportunity to me. And so that internship spiraled into not only choosing to pursue a master's degree, but also the fellowship and internship experience that I had during my master's degree. And then while I was at the American Philosophical Society developing those relationships, I went on from a fellowship to a part-time position with them while I continued my master's degree. So I was able to do the fellowship and internship and then also a position with them. And so when it came to moving back to Ohio, I had established relationships here already on top of new relationships with people who do really valuable work in this field. And I think it's something the history department does really well here is you guys foster a lot of events and opportunities for people within this program to meet fellow history students and talk to alumni who are working in this field or other fields or whatever it may be. And I think it's something that everyone should take advantage of here and continue to foster those relationships even once you graduate. So continuing in a role where I get to keep making history accessible and pushing those boundaries, being a part of those conversations to make sure that we go beyond just digitization. What else can we be doing to make history accessible for other people? I think networking, like a lot of people kind of think it's only for STEM majors, like it's only business people that's valuable for, and it's absolutely not. I mean, even if you're only networking with business people, that could still be so valuable, because I think a lot of people like lack the realization too that like there's archives in corporate buildings. Like there are people with history backgrounds working at like Deloitte or whatever it may be. Like these people have these backgrounds and they're working there, you know? And so recognizing that and continuing to foster those relationships with anyone and everyone is so valuable. So advice-wise to any undergrads out there, number one, if you want to pursue grad school, whether it's for something history related or not, like say it's law school, kind of adjacent, but things of that nature, make sure you have wonderful relationships with your professors because they're writing your recommendation letters. That's step one. If you don't want to go to grad school and people are pressuring you to do it, don't do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. And three, you can get a job in any field with this degree. Don't let people limit you. I think that's the most valuable piece of advice I could give anyone in any degree. Like you are not limited by what you chose to do, unless say like you're a doctor, then you're limited. But with anything within this field, you can pursue so many things, and don't let someone tell you you can't because you chose to study something you're passionate about.